Hey guys, and welcome to Becoming Well Read number 16. It's a video series where I talk about one of the stories I've recently read in an attempt to become well read. In the last video, we spoke about Edgar Allen Poe's The Unparalleled Adventure of One Hans Falk. And in this video, we're going to talk about The Balloon Hoax by Edgar Allen Poe. Now, this is the complete tales and poems of Edgar Allan Poe. I'm not going to read through the entire thing back to back to back. That's just a way overload of Edgar Allan Poe. But yeah, let's talk about the balloon hoax. The story itself was a bit uninteresting. It basically details a journey that a few people took. They were trying to cross the English Channel in a Zeppelin or a hot air balloon type of aircraft, basically. They were aeronauts. A strong wind took them and blew them, and they ended up going to North Carolina in the United States. They flew straight across the ocean. This story would have been unbelievable at the time because there were no transatlantic flights. Everybody was traveling basically on land and by sea, not by air. The story, I think, of the balloon hoax, Edgar Allan Poe passed it off as true. The Sun-Times, this is in our world, not in the story, but the Sun-Times had published this story in one of their newspapers, and people just ate up the story. They thought it was true. The amount of detail that Edgar Allan Poe put into the story about the people and their journey and who they were, and they kept diaries and how it happened with the strong wind and how they rode the wind currents and how, I think it took about 4 days for them to complete the journey. And just different things. It was basically people were like not believing that it happened, that someone crossed the Atlantic Ocean on what amounts to a hot air balloon. And to be honest, it didn't happen. It was a hoax, and it was a pretty good one. A lot of people think Edgar Allan Poe is this dark and depressing guy, this dark and depressing character, but this story goes to show that he did have a funny side. He fooled everybody. The Sun-Times later had to issue an apology for publishing this story, and I guess that's something that's not really changed much in the media. If you go on Fox News, CNN, they always want to report the latest story, report the newest thing that's happening. And a lot of times they fail to fact check or to check what's going on. As a matter of fact, I remember that there was a story about this boy in a hot air balloon, and that was like a hoax too. You could look up Balloon Boy on YouTube and see that recently the news was reporting about this boy that was in a hot air balloon, and that was also a hoax. So Edgar Allan Poe wasn't the last person to do a hoax like this. And this story about these people crossing the English Channel is very similar to the story of Hans Falk. That also was written as a hoax. And so I think the two stories were pretty interesting to read back to back, where one was a guy taking a hot air balloon to the moon, which is a lot less believable than someone crossing the ocean on basically a Zeppelin on an aircraft. And so yeah, that's basically what the story's about. Would I recommend it for anybody to read? No. It was really dull and boring. And I think Edgar Allan Poe, to his credit, to get people at the time to believe it, he had to put a lot of details in this. And so it was sort of like overly drenched with details and with sort of information that if someone were thinking, oh, this didn't happen, and he's trying to disprove them, he put that in there to try to make it seem like the story was more believable than it was, because at that time nobody had crossed the ocean on an aircraft. While I didn't like the story of The Balloon Hoax by Edgar Allan Poe, I did really enjoy the backstory to it, how it was published by the Sun-Times, how people basically sold out those copies of, the first transatlantic flight, and so they were really excited to buy the newspaper, how the Sun-Times had to later issue an apology because they published it, how Edgar Allan Poe still got paid because they sold so many newspapers. And it sort of gives insight into, sometimes people think he was a dark and depressed person, and he was. He had a lot of family issues and poverty. He lived through poverty throughout his whole life. His wife was very sick. But yeah, it sort of like gives another side of Edgar Allan Poe, that he did have like this jokester in him to write a hoax, basically, to fool people. And so that was the 16th episode of Becoming Well Read. And now we get to the point where I talk about the next book, the next episode of Becoming Well Read, and that's going to be The Stand by Stephen King. This book is a monster, but I'm almost at the end of it, so Hopefully I get to put this out within a month. So this was the complete and the uncut version of The Stand, which I'll be talking about next time, the 17th episode of Becoming Well Read. Please leave a like if you enjoy Edgar Allan Poe, if you enjoy Stephen King. If you've read any of these books, you have questions, comments, leave a comment down below. Ask and let's have a conversation about these books that I'm reading. Also, please subscribe if you like these book or metal detecting or video game content. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you on the next one. Ciao.